Yo, silakan silakan Bu.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, we will have a guest lecture session, Fundraising 101, A Legal Perspective by Mr. Nathaniel Oluwandeo Fitramahutso. Our moderator for today is Mr. Felix Gunadi. He is one of the lecturers for the Economic Survival subject. As you know, this guest lecture session is part of the Economic Survival lecturer. So hopefully, after you follow this guest lecture session, you can learn a lot from here and relate it to your business project. Without further ado, I will hand over to our moderator, Mr. Felix Gunadi.
Okay, again, good morning, Mr. Nathaniel, for joining us, yeah, or far away from. Okay, before we go, I think as you can see the slide and support, yeah, maybe we can join Mr. Nathaniel as well, yeah. Mr. Nathaniel is expert in law, in legal, especially during the funding. Yeah, later on we're gonna see the presentation. Presented by Mr. Nathaniel. Mr. Nathaniel.
How much time we have? It's about an hour. Okay. So I want to make it a bit interactive rather than just one-sided. So we also have a few slides here as well. So let me stand and then I provide. Let me stand and I will provide some kind of slides and background on the presentation. It's a lot of slides, but what I want to do here now is feel free to interrupt me, or maybe if you have questions, don't wait until the end, because I feel it's a bit better if we can, really able to have discussion, because then talking in an hour, one-sided, is a bit tiring as well. So I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so a bit of me. So I spent most of my career in the legal sector. So I did my bachelor degree at UI, Faculty of Law, and also my master at New York University. I'm doing now a PhD at the University of Indonesia, so doing research on startup as well. So my career history, I was in law firms, and in 2016, I was the general counsel of Gojek and Ruangguru. So I spent 4 years in the startup sector as the head of legal, and now I'm helping mainly clients in startups and venture capital. Okay, next slide. So we will talk a lot. There's a lot of topics here. So what I'll do is I will try to survey things that might be relevant to you, and then because what Pak Moderator says that you have a course on startups and economic survival, then we can go on into certain slides that might be relevant to you, and then we can have discussion. So I'll try to make it as quick as possible, maybe around 30 minutes or so or more, and then we can have discussions on some of the topics. Okay, next slide. So this is something that you guys maybe already learned at the courses, but yes, although I would say it maybe when we created the slide, I will say it's a great time to start a so maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we had this slide, I was saying, it's great time. Now, start a company. Actually, now I would say it a little bit more softer, maybe, and it's a great time to start a company. Because to be honest, we are facing a very good beginning emerging consumer class. So with a bonus demographic bonus, we have a young population, you guys. We have a diversified macro environment, although nowadays, if you learn about and read all the news, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And there's a tremendous value creation, meaning that there's an opportunity to really make a product that will basically attract a lot of people. Next slide. And if you see here, there's a lot of growth. People are still talking a lot of India. So India will still be the main, what I would say as the main driver. So when you talk to, if you are here, if you are there, there's a conference by Tech in Asia and Illustrate Asia. India is still one of the top driver for consumer class, followed by China, although there's a bit of softening. Indonesia is somewhere in between, but it's still very promising. And one thing that there's an emerging middle class, so there's a lot of people who's willing to pay and willing to try new products. Next. And also diversified macro environment. So, one of the things is rupiah, regardless now it's 15,600 or 800 something. I just read an article by Prof. Ari from UI this morning at Kompas. In some way, rupiah achieves certain stability. So if you look at the past 1-2 years, it's 500, 1500, and then it can go around 4, 5, 6, 7, but it doesn't kind of fluctuate a lot. So in some way, it's quite stable. Next. And of course, there's an opportunity for valuations. So although there's a lot of factor in terms of we don't see as many as unicorn anymore. You look at 1 or 2 years ago, every month you have a new unicorn. Now there's a lot of questioning whether the unicorn still have that value as a unicorn. So for example, like my old company, Gojek, Goto, shares, and would it kind of reflect the actual fundamental? But in some way or another, it's still there and surviving. So we don't see them going bankrupt or going down. Yes, they do go down in terms of value, but we see them quite stable in that position. You already have a given, for example, now we have a Gojek, it's given, Grab, it's given, Shopee, 1111, although it's not as good as what people predicted, but it's still there. In some way, you still see quite a stable lines of startup and tech companies. Yes, they're softening, but you see some of the winners on this difficult circumstances. Next. So what are the opportunities and challenges? So one opportunity is we've seen several skill talents. So in some way, Indonesia, people like you guys, highly educated, able now I'm talking in English in some way to understand what I'm saying. If you go to other countries such as even Japan, not everyone can speak English. So in some way, you see that there's a tremendous skill talent. Some of the companies are still thriving, but challenges, one thing is that public markets still have uncertainty. So in some way, we don't see much later stage investment going on in the sector. So that also have its own issues. Next. So fundraising trend, as you see, there's a lot of softening that happens in the quarter of 2022 and 23. The peak is the fourth quarter of 2021. But then because of after the war, the key to 2022, there's kind of downtrend. Although if you see that there's still a little bit uptick, but it's still difficult circumstances in terms of financing. One of the factors is if you learn about the macroeconomics is the fact the cost of money is high because Fed interest rate now. Berapa Pak sekarang Fed? Fed interest rate 6, 8, 4, 8, 5%. No? Yeah. No. So basically, it used to be when you look at context, I forgot how much Fed. Let's coba cek yang sama Ramai. Fed interest rate berapa sekarang? But the for context is when Q4 2021, we achieved is almost 0.5. But then what happened? Why is downtrend? Because the interest rate from Fed is up. So people are better, and then the startup is very risky sector. Although at the most you can get out of the percentage is almost like 9-10%. So in some way it's safer to put it in government bonds, including the US Treasury. So that's why there's a lot of and then the Fed is increasing interest rate because they want to combat inflation. So that's why there's a lot of softening in the sector. Next. Yeah, so we already talked about fundraising trends. Next. So what are the implications? So this is what we say that one is venture capital scheme improve a bit, but there's a lot of drop. So challenges will still persist. That's what I would say. Next. So then how you look at it and should we discourage? So in some way, it's also a good way to kind of reflect and pause and see what works and what's not. And in looking at it, we also see opportunities. You know, in the age of challenges, you also have to see whether there's an opportunity. So one of the things looking at it is how you can really disrupt the market, how you make a difference to the market. So basically, disruptive technology, which you already learned maybe so in your courses, is a way of things that are done. So how disruptive technology is kind of conducted is take a form of new technology that take a place of existing one or complementing, or do a better execution. So in some way, disruptive technology is doing something to disrupt. So the old example is the Gojek market. Before Gojek, it was a negotiations between drivers, and every time you want to have a Gojek, you have to bargain like berapa 100.000, 200.000, no, 50.000, 30.000, depending on the where you want to go. But now, Gojek and Grab by giving you that opportunity to negotiate in the app. So in some way, it's not regulated yet, it's informal. Can regulation keep up with disruptive technology? So the regulations then come at a time maybe 2-3 years after the Gojek started. But in some way or another, regulations will always follow. Very rarely it kind of jumpstart before the technology kind of started. Next slide. So fundraising also one of the things that why disruptive technologies kind of matters is that technology helps by funding. So this is what we'll call as an opportunity. So in scholar lecture literatures, you'll see what fundraising is a way of people who's doing funding disruptive technology. So, you know, as some of you may be aware on ChatGPT, right, it's funded by also venture capital. Most of the innovations that we have is funded by venture capital. Why? Because we can learn a bit later that venture capital take a high risk to get the high returns. What is high risk? So the process of funding it, we call it as fundraising. So fundraising is a process of funding through a series of investment, where the process will follow like a preparation of bids, negotiation of signing of term sheet, negotiation signing of long-term documents, closing wiring the money, and all the accounting admin procedures. Next slide. So, okay, so fundraising is basically people to turning innovative idea to reality. It involves business development, product expansions, and enables startups to attract talents, prototypes, and enter the market. So basically, it's kind of the fuel. Next slide. So there are a few rounds of fundraising. So we go into kind of more details. So if you are just starting something, or maybe something that the university in some university in the US or mostly US, but we also see like Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea as well. They provide initial investment. So they're also what we call as incubator. So people who started a business to incubate new ideas, and then they get initial funding. So that is kind of the first round, investment from family, friends, high net worth individuals. So can be also people who have certain pedigree of money and they want, and bear in mind that even in investment, there's a high probability that the investment will fail. So in that sense, the initial angel round is someone who's willing, buying your idea, and if it doesn't work out, it's fine with it. Because that is not like, some of the mistakes is you just sell your house and you don't have anywhere to live in, just to fund. If you have an extra house, it's okay. Or if you are saying that I want to take this daily move, but then bear in mind that any investment in the startup scheme is still very high risk. And then you start with seed financing. There's a limited number of investors to support initial working capital. And then a series of fundraising, Series A, B, C, and pre-IPO. So this is a long process. So from initial angel to IPO, it can take 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But also, it can also be faster depending on the macro and micro circumstances. Next slide. So one of the things is also bootstrapping. Meaning bootstrapping is you have your own capital and you invest it in a way that to make an upstart of the business and basically living barely at your own. Or crowdfunding meaning that there's not quite a lot of model of crowdfunding, but for example, in restaurants, you can open a restaurant and then half of it is funded by check-in of various people. So that is kind of crowdfunding concept. Next slide. So one of the things in the type of fundraising, there are several things to consider. So 4 is stages of development, funding needs, equity control, and compliance. So it has a different methods. Funding also, it's very important to look how much capital you need. Equity and control, they also care of how much equity ownership you still maintain as a founder. And also compliance, I was kind of legal and regulatory department. So in some way, there's a lot of details in this, but I really like for Q&A, because then if I kind of explain everything, it will be kind of time-consuming as well. But there are some certain parts of the slide here as well that you can look at. Next. So what are the role of law? So as a lawyer, this is kind of what I'm doing. So we have a few things to do. One is we establish business entities. So we establish companies. And then we obtain commercial operation licenses. This is also very tricky because some licenses is open. I think one of the things is highly fluctuating as well. If you ask me whether crypto is legal or not, it's not. It's still considered legal at the exchange, the Bursa Berjangka, at the commodity exchange, but not yet acknowledged as currency. In the process of with the new law on the jasa keuangan, the omnibus sector keuangan, it's considered as semi-security. So as much as that, the regulatory compliance is still shaky. Now, if you look at TikTok ban, the real wording is only if you have social commerce, you cannot do commercial transactions at that app. You need to do in the app. So it's a very murky, if you look at it, sometimes the actual reading of the regulations and the interpretation of people can be very different. So what kind of TikTok now do if our them is creating another app that is separate, another company that is separate, but then you cannot just immediately pay at your TikTok app to basically, oh, I want to purchase this. You need to go to another app. This happens a lot. For example, now Gojek has a GoPay app, has a Gojek app, or Gojek has a Gojek and Tokopedia app, separate app. So it's in some way navigating that also challenging. Drafting legal documents and many more. Next slide. So what to choose usually is a limited liability company. Even in a limited liability PT company, what we have what we call PT UMKM. So it's also possible to have a PT UMKM as long as you reach certain threshold. Until you're weaker, you have to convert yourself into a normal PT. We also use other entity as well, although it's less so for SARS. So CV, for example, and cooperative. Cooperative can be very interesting if, for example, student cooperative, because it allows a more efficient way of distributing capital after you get all the profits and so on. Next. So on company establishment, there's a lot of factors, and this is something that you might already know. You need to go to the notary and put your structure. If it's a foreign investment, it will have a minimum capital of 10 million. You need to get the tax ID and PEP. You need to get the NIB, nomor induk usaha, and all the licenses. The licenses is not easier, it's online. But you need to make sure you apply for the right license. So once you are successfully registered, you can start the business and if next slide. So this is all the licenses. We'll go into kind of details, NIB, PDPSA, EUD, and other things. Next. So it's also very technical as well. In term sheet, there are 2 shares. The first is ordinary, is what founders and early investors have. The second is preferred shares. So this is where the investor have priority rights, where they will get the earlier distributions of dividends, liquidation, and proceeds, and also they will also have rights to approve certain major things. And also, there's an equity side, but also funded by debts, convertible debt, franchise debt. So that is an surat utang. In some way, it can be converted into shares, but there also debt that is not converted to shares, but it's a risky debt, what we call a venture debt. So the upside is throughout what we call as warrant. So the upside of the price plus the interest. Well, very technical, but happy to explain if you are very interested in this topic. Okay, next slide. So these are the documents for transaction. Also very technical. Share purchase agreement, share subscription agreement, share purchase is to sell shares between the shareholders. Share subscription is to put the money. You also have shares agreement where it contains element of the rights and obligation of the shareholders. And convertible bond is a loan documents that can be converted into shares. Next slide. So and there's a lot of regulatory compliance, OJK, securities laws, ML, KYC, investor protections, and so on. Next. So the process also quite lengthy in terms of due diligence. You have all the checklists. And then you have a virtual data room. So basically, you put all your docs in one data room. then you do a due diligence investigations. The investor will check whether you have obtained the right licenses, you have the right contracts and so on, and then there's a report. Next, this is also not just the legal, but also tax and finance, depending on your scale. So this is all the documents, corporation documents, contracts, finance documents, IP. Next slide. So I'll not go into that, but there's a lot of issues in terms of legal pitfalls in fundraising. Just make sure that if you are in the States, get a proper lawyer to help you identify. And then it's also good to read this or learn about this to make sure before you do the fundraising. But it might take a bit of a while until you are at that stage, because usually this happens a lot in the later stage round where series B, C, or maybe series A also. Next. So this is like all Chinese proper, the rules of the game, the stakes and the meeting game. So one of the things that is in a startups or fund, you have to look at it as not building your conglomerates. You build it like a fund creations. So when investors put your money in you, it's not for long term, 5 years, 7 years, and there's also the exit, and you can also be exited in the early stage, and some professional will replace you. So in some way, starting a startup is not like creating your own kingdom. It's creating something that you stay there temporarily, and then you have to let it go when the time comes. Next slide. So I'll just go as my promise, 30 minutes initial discussion. There's a lot of it here, very technical, but I like hearing more, and then we can have discussions to see which area you want to give more, and then I can explain. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now time to question and answer. Does anyone have a questions? Maybe discussion, maybe you want to have a discussion? You can raise your hand. Want to have discussion? Oh. Okay, I think they're still shy. Okay.
Hello everyone. Introduce myself. My name is Dewi and you can call me Winda. I'm from major agribusiness, class 2023. And then my question is, to build a successful business, of course, we need investors, right? And then my question, how to find the right investor for our business, and what kind of report need to be provided the investors? Thank you.
Okay. This is the right investor.
How to find the right investor? So I have to put this into perumpamaan or analogy, but it's maybe the feeling of it is finding the right partner. In a way, partner is your right partner, pacar, gitu, cowok, in your context. Because to be honest, the relationship with the investor is not always happy or not always sad. In some way, it matters. You see the latest politics in the country, it's matter some sort of the. There's no investor is your permanent enemy, and hopefully not your enemy ya. Maksudnya not always been the right. I would say it's not always the right partner at the right time, but can also be your strongest partner at the difficult time. So it's maybe an abstract answer. So how to find it? One is, can we go to the slide on the slide number, which one? The one that crowds of fundraising. There's a slide with crowds of fundraising. Yes, that one. Before that, yeah, this one, yeah. So if you see, who are your first investor? It's your family, your friends, and high net worth individuals. It sounds, oh yeah, it's a good investor, I know them. But I've worked on a dispute where the most difficult party to negotiate is family, friends, and high net worth individuals. Why? Is because they have what we say as certain subjective interests. So for example, so this is a case that happens also. I have someone who have a restaurant, one of my clients. They already go with a family friend investor, 5 years more. It's all done good, the restaurant. And then what happened is that COVID happens. And then they pivoted into what we call as cloud kitchen. So basically they do delivery, they do not opening the restaurant anymore, basically, but they run and they do delivery. And it's so successful that the founder or the one who's running the business for 7 years say, I want to make it a permanent cloud kitchen, and already have a venture capital worth of money. But then the family friends say, I don't like your idea. I like our restaurant. And once COVID stops, let's go back to the concept. And we don't need venture capital. In the end, it's something that unexpected. You always have this logic to say, oh, if initial investors have, because what happened after the venture capital, the valuation will go up. It's a promising business. But don't people follow that logic? Because then people have other reasons to invest. I think a similar dilemma, for example, like President University has a very good land in my Serpong, for example, and say, let's move to Serpong, udah rame kan to Serpong. But in some way, maybe Jababeka feels, we have this attachment with this area and why we here and so on. But then you cannot question, although the business logic is very good, you cannot question something like that. And you need to appreciate investor who say that I'm investing with you not just because of commercial needs. So when you ask me what's the right investor, is very tricky. Because one is relationship, and with relationship is up and down. And second, you just have to ask yourself, what kind of investors that I need? So in the end, my advice to you is do your business, and then when you have investors, really query whether that investor will basically help your business going forward. So the logical thing is if your business is selling, I don't know, what's in your business plan? What do you want to do? Creating that. What's the mau bisnis apa gitu? Bayang, let's give one example. So I can imagine what kind of investor you will able to have. What's your business idea?
My business idea
Iya.
in Satsal is fresh smoothies idea. Yes.
Oh, smoothie. Yes, that's interesting. So let's say smoothies. Okay, who are logical? Okay, should we go to FMCG? FMCG itu fast moving consumer goods. You get a lot of conglomerates itu ada di situ. You also have multinational like Unilever. So the thing is that should your investor be someone in that sector? And that's also interesting because then there might be young people, second, third generations who's interested to invest in that. I think, for example, Grup Gunung Sewu aja punya the call it the Rejuve is owned by Gunung Sewu because Gunung Sewu has a lot of pineapple plantation. And they synergistic. So Musodo is a very good guy, and he also believes, and he also sometimes helps startups. But should you go to that business? Okay, You have someone who's supporting you. But then, of course, the risk is if you're doing great, it can be that your idea can be inspiration for them to start a similar business in their group as well. Oh, Triwinda has this smoothies that everyone likes, and suddenly, oh, let's take it and have my own idea. So one of my clients, for example, is a baby food manufacturer. One of the angel investors is someone who's producing ice cream, healthy ice cream. Gak usah sebut brandnya apa, but healthy ice cream. So that person will give, it's not immediately competing, but it's similar FMCG. And in some way, the ice cream vendor will not likely go into baby food. Or they will around. Maybe ice cream for baby, yes, but very far-fetched. So in some way, it's a complementary, and I looked and I attended that meeting with that investor, and it works. In some way, it gives a good advice. In the early stage, not just get people who can give you money, but also try to have people who give you the mentorship. So the technical know-how, the mentorship, the insights. And not just, you can have one of people who look like that kind of business, like ice cream investor. But the other way, you can also look people who works in, for example, marketing, also on marketplace that can give you ideas. So look at investors who can value add to your business, not just give you money. So that's kind of the summary of it.
Thank you. Maybe that's answer your questions, yeah. So find the investor is like find the right partner, and so you have. That's why I always say to my student as well. If you work together with your friend, yeah, be careful. You're gonna lose your friend.
That's correct. Actually, there's this. This is also another, and there's a resource on this one. So, if you want to look at some of the books from the US, Noah Wasserman, on startups. So basically, and also there's one that I reading now, Startup Failure. So the thing is that be careful in starting a business with your friend, because there's a lot of, it's your good friend, but one thing's going sour, it's also can be, what you call it, a challenge. If this is someone that you know, is a friend of friend, you're not that close, somewhere under, it can be easier to resolve things, or you can have a third party helping you, your friend outside of that helping you. But if it is your close friend or ages, then just be careful, because, and also if it is your sister, your siblings, also be careful, because then forever you born with your sister or brother, when your parents no longer here, then they are still your family. So just also be careful. I don't say it's not good. I have a good friend, Wilson and William Utomo. They are brothers, but they're going very well. So not always the case that it's not always a bad idea, but sometimes you need to question more and see whether it works. For some people, it works. Even husband and wife businesses can also work. So, but if it doesn't work, you need to make sure you have something to resolve it, rather than sacrificing your relative or family.
Yeah, thank you. Because I have an experience as well. I opened a business, and then with my friend, and then I lose two of my friends. Yeah, because we just have a gentle agreement. We don't have the written and so on and so forth. So yeah, from the legal perspective, it's very important if you have a written document about the sharing and so on and so forth. Yeah.
But I just want to add to that as well. So some of my clients, especially asking me, I want to start a business. Should we have an agreement? Sometimes what I will say is, don't worry about the agreement. Just work on the execution. Once you have that seed financing investor, then you have that agreement. Because the investor will come with the agreement, and then you need to come with your own agreement as well on that round. Why? Because some people are just too busy with the initial agreement, we call it the founder's agreement. In the end, the investor go and say, I don't like that agreement, I want to renegotiate. and more difficult for you to basically say no, because then, okay, and then you have an agreement, and there might be someone in that table say, I don't like arrangement in creating also another sour. So having that agreement or not, for the investor, usually I would rather go into have some, put some, no need to have a formal agreement with lawyer, just a paper you sign, okay, this is what we imagine, but I will say the last word subject to fundraising. So then in some way you can manage on fundraising, but this is just your recourse on things. So no need to be formal juga Pak, gitu, in some way.
Yeah, when I was on business just so we don't have any written document.
Memo juga catatan kami itu nggak apa-apa juga sih. As a evidence that this is, but it's not binding ya. Even though you have their notes, whatever it is, it's kind of more proof that you have agreed on something, but it's not something you can enforce. So that's usually my suggestion to my clients.
After seed funding, then
And when you have seed funding or initial angel funding, then because and this is maybe a subjective view from a lawyer, if you have an agreement that is not a good agreement, rather you don't have an agreement. Because then having that proper agreement also costs you.
with the transparency.
Yeah, gitu.
Okay, maybe have another questions. Another question. Or maybe
Anyone in Zoom have a question?
Yes, Zoom. Bisa.
Hello, may I introduce myself? My name is Muhammad Yusuf Irsyadullah,
Wait.
from the batch 2023. Is the sound clear?
Can you repeat it?
Can you repeat the questions?
Yes. My question is it's mostly connected from the previous question, but when we are starting a business, when actually finding an investor, from the two things that I actually conclude from that statement, from the answer of the Mr. Speaker, is which are the mostly the mostly yang paling dicari-cari. Firstly, is it the investor connection, or is it the money of the investor itself, like the amount of money that the investor is actually giving to our company? So which are we have to we have to utamakan firstly for starting a business?
Siapa yang nanya? Sorry.
Yusuf.
Yusuf, ya Yusuf, nggak melihat mukanya Yusuf di sini, tapi nggak apa-apa.
Link or money?
Link or money? I would say both. I think this is the answer is quite quite nice gitu ya, both. But you need the money to run the business, but you also need the connection to get you where you are. So one is, I think, and this is an advice that I give also to, so we do have clients that do Series A, B, C fundraising, but we also meet with people who just started and say, okay, I want to fundraise, what should I do and what I should look at from legal side, what are the pitfalls? So we have quite a, maybe let's go to the legal pitfall. So maybe there's one, ada yang slide pitfall ya. Things to, okay, next. Ke bawah kayaknya dulu. Ya, pitfall. Yes. Sebelumnya begini. Okay, so So this is kind of the pitfall that I mentioned from legal side. But in some way, the way it works is make sure, as you already mentioned, Felix, there's what we call the MVP, minimum viable products, and so on. Before you talk to an investor, make sure you have all things ready in terms of product. You already have software discovery. I think there's a course that you taught, and then you can get entrepreneur to look at it as well. There's a lot of what we call as the validation moment. Make sure you already pass that, you have an interest, and then you can go to an investor. For angels and seed investor or maybe early investor, it's fine to get the money, but then you need to kind of set expectation. In some way, you cannot demand too much because they put your money. But another way, they need to be convinced on your products. Jadi investor nggak cuma ini ya Yusuf, dapat uang kita bisa depend, enggak gitu. In some way, they need to be convinced that you can do good. So for me, is that the money, some people have access money, they will just give it to you. Some people doesn't give the money right away, they only give you advice. Some people connect you with other people, but then they stop. But what is important is endorsement. Nah, ini penting nih. Some people doesn't know. Endorsement can be in the form of money. Oh, I like what you are doing. I believe in you. I put money. Endorsement can be also in the line of that person as someone who's reputable, able to talk a VC or a VC partner or an institutional investor saying that this is a good product. I think if you're not investing in this, it's a missed opportunity for you. But then they need to be in a level where they can be very comfortable saying that because there's also their reputation. And I think when you say that thing, not only connection, I know people, but that people able to have their credibility to endorse your product. Kadang-kadang endorse itu bukan cuma sekedar ada tokoh politik atau siapa, kayak istilah di mana-mana kan presiden atau siapa dengan produk kita, beli gitu. No, it's really a testimony, like a happy customer testimony or a happy investor testimony. Someone who feels that it's just sayang banget gitu kalau nggak invest. And that thing needs time and validations and relationship building. So money or connection, first yourself, are you being validated? Have you been validated for your stakes? And that will come with honesty. Because then one of the things that is not a myth, but a reality is that if you do good in these circumstances, investor will come to you with or without endorsement. But with endorsement, you will get the way to the best investor.
Okay, so I hope that's answer ya, Yusuf ya. So both link and money as well, especially with the endorsement. I like the way the endorsement, this one is quite effective. Yeah. And Tetzel also already work together with the venture capital. One is the Indogen venture capital. Yeah, so later on, maybe I think next year we're gonna have some PC as well. So we're gonna like a PC competition or something like that. Yeah. So any other questions? No. Okay, so I think I'm just want to know about your opinion. How about if the student want to borrow money from the online? So is that how is from the legal perspective? Is that okay, or because Mr. Nathaniel mentioned earlier, is a high risk? Is that a little bit high risk than the funding from the angel investor? So what do you think?
So from online,
Yeah.
online, yeah. So the thing with online, there are also illegal lending you should avoid. Some is KPA kind of type of funding, and B2B in some way peer-to-peer, but also online. you need to look at online as much as possible. You need to avoid. Why? One is the interest rate is higher, and second, it looks on your personal credit rating. So, for example, in B2B, you use, one thing that I would imagine, like Trilinda has a smoothie business and need to buy certain kind of fruits atau apa for the smoothie, and the way to fund it by pay later gitu. Whether you buy in marketplace with pay later. If you're really able to do it and make sure you have all this calculation right with all the kind of things, for example, the interest rate, the terms of payment, is okay. But some of these calculations is because they are not designed for productive lending. They are designed for personal lending. So I would more suggest you to have one bootstrapping and friends and family. So basically it's not lending, it's investment. Because lending means, or if you have lending, it's like a soft loan gitu ya. In some way, I don't know whether here, but we have a few of UMKM credit lending. Itu PNM, Madani, micro lending. Yeah, some institutions provide that, and it's better because it has better terms of payment dibanding dengan online. So I would say rather to go into that route than have online lending.
So just avoid the online pinjol because the interest rate is quite high. Yeah. Okay. Any other participant? Maybe
Atau Zoom boleh kalau ada yang dari Zoom
online?
lagi setelah.
Online? Anyone?
Okay, thank you, sir. I want to ask about.
What's your name?
I'm Tafhan from EE 2023. For tech product or tech company, how to convince the investor about our product. Yes, sometimes the tech product is quite abstract. So how to convince them to invest our product?
Yeah, thank you for the question. In a way, it involves lots of factor, yeah. And I think Pak Felix already talked about the technicalities, yeah. There's, if you look at some of the books, for example, or literatures, or maybe someone it's in the internet, there's a lot of one is to achieve certain final products is being validated. It's being validated. Should like it's being validated by, for example, there's a consumer market, so they're all there's kind of some parameter you can look at the internet to look what's a viable product. But how to get a venture capital funding? That's difficult. One is you just need to make sure that the tech product is able to be multiplied. There's a multiplications or scaling that will, so the venture capital will ask the question to whoever founders to say, okay, how you will use your money and how your money will make a scaling of your product. For example, one of the things that people are doing are groceries. So you can buy sayur, groceries, buah online gitu ya. Let's say, oh, I have a new app that will make sure that whatever I can trace is farm to table. So I can trace my sayur and my buah from the farm directly, and it will be less than 2 days, for example. And whoever buying it will see, oh, my fruits comes from, I don't know, Bandung, Pangalengan, Lembang, something like that. And I can see that when I order it, langsung dipetik, let's say. So the question is that, okay, venture capital, why is different? Why? Because people will see the product is fresh, and people has a lot of demand to say that I want to have fresh product. You need to prove like you're doing sidang skripsi gitu ya. Do people really want it? Have you done skripsi? Have you done research to say, hey, people like these products that is fresh? Okay, you have it. People are willing to pay for their products more than just buying it in the local market atau Indomaret atau Alfamart misalnya. You have also poor strategy. Are people really able to pay? So in some way, you need to answer the questions and prove that this is promising, and if possible, do certain micro experiment to say that, you know, I've tested to these people at Jababeka, they really like it because there's no good products in Jababeka. So in one way, the summary is there's an issue or there's a problem that your solutions will be game changer and the money will use to change the game. And it will be, so the thing is that it cannot be just mediocre, it has to be substantial. Because venture funding rely on substantial changes rather than a mediocre. Then, especially in the early stage. But once you go into mid stage, later stage, you can have incremental growth. But in the early stage, it has to be substantial growth. And that's why now it's not easy, because then a lot of people have been doing different things, and you need to prove why you are different. So that's, I think, the very difficult test for it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nathaniel. So just compete with the scaling the product, scaling the product, and make sure your technology or your apps or whatever technology you want to do is a game changer as well. So I think there's a lot of engineering, I think, or IT or IS, I think. Okay, so I think is there last questions? Okay. Last questions, and then
First, let me introduce myself. My name is Nisa and I'm from Environmental Engineering. So in economic survival, we have to make some business, but we have some struggle to make a business. One of them is we have a lot of ideas for building a business, but finding the right customers for our business is very difficult. So the question is, how do we find the right customers for our business so that our business can run well and help customers who always rely on our business? Thank you.
I think that is a very, I hate to say this, but I think there's no tips. The tips is jalanin aja and discover. So, you know, as simple as me, like I started my firm 2020, and with the premise of serving the VC and startup community. At that time, there's no law firm that is doing specific on that. And then I will just go and meet my friends and say, hey, do you need someone who used to be with Gojek and Ruang Guru helping your little stuff? You know what? Yes, I think I need your help because some of the people in law firms are not yet in tune into the sector. So your insight will be beneficial. So then we have now a small team of 8, and then we able to do multiple transactions with startup and VC. So in some way, it has to be, how do you make sure you get the right customer? There's a lot of process, what we call as discover the customer and their appetite. So some of the things that I look at, I have a daughter, anak perempuan, 13 years old. So this is also interesting, looking at what's the preference, what she likes, like music she likes. I don't know whether you know. She went to Java Jazz few many months ago and said, I want to do this artist called Love. I never heard about Love. Taylor Swift, of course, tapi I never heard about Love. And then it's interesting why you like Love. It apparently that the way she sings is someone like my generation. So I'm 42 now, which I grew up with more jazz, kind of not something that I expected. Mungkin sekarang I look at K-pop and maybe these people these days is K-pop, but looking at what's do people like is very difficult, because then you need to prove that they like it. They not just like it, they are willing to pay for it. And this is the most difficult, they are willing to use it all the time. So some of the startups that we supported have difficulty because then they only go to the platform once a month to do something. They're not really basically able to have what we call is, in the terms is stickiness. Jadi kayak repeat product. So one of my clients, for example, has baby food. The question is, the baby food the customer will stay loyal to their food for 6 months, and after that, they go to another food, or they basically create the food. So the customer is there, the demand is there, but it's not sustainable. People are not using it sustain like, okay, setahun masih ini enggak, in 1 year do you still purchase the product or not? As simple now, there's what we call as healthcare products for baby, atau kayak skincare for baby. In some way, it used into certain age, and after that, what do you do? So that question is a discovery process. So if you to test all the time, one of the in talking with founders and some of the literatures that I read is you need to be mindful with changing appetite. Like my generations, we like Instagram. Your generation, TikTok. My parents' generations, Facebook. The thing that, okay, now you have this product, should you do an AdSense di mana? Di TikTok, di Instagram, di Facebook, depending on your target market. And you just have to, in the beginning, you just have to put a little bit and see where the traction is. You cannot immediately, okay, I know my target is TikTok, you should go there, but then you selling products for my generation that I don't have a TikTok. Nggak bisa juga. So where to find the right customer? Ya harus coba sih. And the question is this, and this is very important. Even though you are saying that yes, this is the right one, and then we go to the investor will test the idea again to say that is it true that there is a solid customer and a solid retention? What we call this retention rate. You are stay on that and purchasing your products. So I think that is something that, some of the things that are very interesting like this. So I used to work in, if you look at my CV, I used to work in Carrefour. So 2010. You can imagine at the time, we go to weekend to Carrefour, and then we have all staff, we go and do, for example, a grocery for a month. Itu rame banget parkiran Carrefour, very good demand. Nowadays, my wife, for example, using Astro, Happy Fresh, Firebox, Segari, and purchasing it just enough for 1 week. Not really doing the month grocery. If we need it urgently, we can go like even the Gojek app. There's a marketplace app to buy from Alpha. So in some way, you don't really go into habit of doing the last grocery every month. So when you have something different, how you fit into the changing business. And don't forget, it's changing all the time. So even though you know that, oh, it's good, the next day it might be people changing the behavior again. So this is something that always discover what your customer wants, and what we call it the beware of false positive. Jadi jangan lihat, jangan di awal-awal dengan PHP, oh ini kayaknya demandnya suka nih. And also for something like smoothies, like Triwinda tadi ya, just make sure that you're consistent. So I have this business, the business is not my client, but some of the people that in the community, we have what we call Korean experience. Jadi kayak makan kayak di tenda-tenda Korea gitu loh. Nggak mau sebut mereknya, tapi adalah di beberapa daerah itu like. So it's a panda, and then all the Korean foods, and then bukan soju yang nggak alkohol, and then you have it. In some way, what's being said in the community is that it has a very big demand in the beginning, but then because people are off because they are waiting in line for a long time, people are beginning to say, "Oh, it's not worth it because then I wait too long." And nowadays it's softening because people have the perception as a not good customer experience, and it needs to have another way of attracting people and have the right amount of people coming because they need to have good experience. So even to get the right customer and to make it retention, they want to go there all the time, every weekend, every month. You need to have a certain discovery, and then you need to adjust your formula all the time. I think that's the answer.
Okay, thank you. So just go ahead and maybe later on you will find your own customer with your segment. Okay, I think is there anyone here in the Zoom? No. Okay. Oh, one question. Is that okay? Okay. The last questions, yeah. Last questions.
Lawrence introduce myself. My name is Rio from Lautex 2023.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Nama siapa? Rio. Okay.
I would like I think there are previous details that you given to us. How can we synchronize with the investor if the investor would like to check the concept of our business? As we know that the investor is the crucial thing in funding business, but in the other side we need to fit our concept as the plan we have made. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Rio. To be honest, it's so can you go into the states of fundraising slides? Okay. For that. Yes, this one. So one of the things why it's a very difficult life to be a founder or starting a business with venture capital is investor at different stages has his own expectation. So for example, the initial angel round investor, they would just go, and then you might have very successful business in the beginning. And then you have seed financing. Usually seed financing, what they do is you can do whatever you want, or what you are doing now, but then you able to scale that. So in some way, seed financing allow you to go broader and scale your business. But then once you go to this ABC, things will get problematic. One is there might be a barrier to your growth. So in some way, you already have the seed financing. Even you put more money, the business will stay and doesn't really, there's a Pareto yang kalau di ekonomi is Pareto principle. In some way, you're not able to really able to get the next impact because it reached the saturation. So then the question from ABC will ask you about, okay, what's your diversification plan, or in an extreme way, are you willing to pivot? So one of the most common pivot, and for example, I take a grocery or marketplace business, before they go selling to customer, now they selling to businesses, restoran, horeca, gitu yang misal sayur-sayuran gitu. Bulk buying rather than retail buying. Because retail buying has logistic costs or smaller tickets, beringer dikit gitu. But buying, the margin is lower, but then you can deliver more products. So that is a heated discussions, and investor has his own thinking. So one of the things that always problematic, the founders already feel comfortable with the business, the suppliers, the market, the cities they are operating, while investor says that I will not get my multiple, my investment valuations if you do just like this. You might be profitable, you might be stable, but it's not giving me added value. So they will push you to say you need to do differently. And in some way, it's a negotiation, Rio. So you need to show that, okay, one, we have another better idea and can it be validated. Second, if you stay the way you are, some founders feel that I cannot grow more. Why not? Before we spend the money, we just stay where we are. Or some founders return the money to the investor if they already have the money. Or if I'm fundraising, why not doing the fundraising at this point of time? Because then we don't see the proposal or the discussion will be viable. Jadi kadang opsinya nggak cuma sekedar hanya apa ya, nego aja dan ngikutin gitu. But it could also be okay. Let's not do it this time. Let me be profitable. And once I get a better idea, we can talk, and then we can fund that. But I want to do the new product or the pivot from existing money. So it's not always how to convince investor, but first of all, you have to be convinced that it will work. Then your investor you need to convince your investor to see, okay, this experiment work, we'll do it. Or you say that, okay, thanks for the offer, but if you feel that business plan has to be that way, allow me to test it, or let me wait until a certain time until I'm convinced I should do it that way, or we do it differently. And it's very common for Series B, C, and so on to basically wait until there's comfort, accommodation, and negotiations, and settlement of that negotiations between the founders and investor for their product to really work well. But also, need to be mindful. It's also okay to raise not a bigger fund, but certain small fund just enough to try new products and strengthen the existing product. So that don't put your egg in one basket also works well. So for example, okay, I'll buy your idea, but let's not spend the money all that, maybe 20-30%, and let's wait until it's work. And then we put the money here as reserve, and the other one to fund the existing business. That's also possible.
Thank you very much. Is that answer the questions? Yeah. So talking about the investor, I think there will be two type of investor: active investor and passive investor. Is that same time, or is it the same thing, or?
So what happened, and this is quite technical, it seed and Series A, B, C round. That's what we call the lead investor. So we don't say passive funds. So we kind of more elite, meaning that those who basically have seats, jadi komisaris, board seats, have approval for budget, business plan, and so on. It's kind of more leading investor. But some investor, they not passive, but they rely on this investor to make decision. They usually have what we call decision on a bigger item like acquisition, merger, sale of company. But they also involved in a certain way and have also informal relationship. So I very rarely see a very pure passive investor, but they may take a little bit different active roles.
Okay, make applause, yeah, to Nathaniel for the slide, yeah. So maybe we can take a picture. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah, picture. In one is gift to Nathaniel. Okay. Okay, maybe I can give back to MC. Thank you, Mr. Nandana.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation and the explanation. Hopefully after this session, you have more insight related with the startup, fundraising, and also a legal perspective. As a token of appreciation, we would like to welcome Junita up front and also our speaker, Mr. Nathaniel, to come up front. We have a token of appreciation.
Thank you. Oh, I like the
Okay, as for the last section, we will have a photo section. So, please. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the student, please come up here and be seated in at front. So we will have a photo section with our speaker. Yeah, the lecturer can be up front. Oh, okay, so the committee first. Okay, student, please come up front. We will have a photo session first before ending our today's meeting. For those of you online, please stay on a bit because we will have a bit of a photo for online also. For those of you offline, don't forget to fill out the attendance list. It is already available at the door before you enter the auditorium.
Yuk, kita hitung lagi ya. Satu, saya.
Okay, thank you everyone. To close our meeting, once again, please don't forget to fill out the attendance list, whether you're attending it online or offline. For online participants, the link to your attendance is already available on the chat section. Please do check it out. The recording of our meeting will also be available and distributed through your lecturers. Please do check your emails also related with your recording. At the end, thank you everyone for being here. We'll see you again in our next guest lecture session.
Mana? Triwinner tadi kan? Oh, di mana?